Та ердөө 6,000 төгрөг гэр бүл найзын хөнгөлөлтөнд бүртгэлтэй дотны 5 хүнтэйгээ өдрийн сарын турш хязгааргүй яриарай. Mobicom.
Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Олон улсын Зэсийн судалгааны группийн Ерөнхий нарийн бичгийн дарга ноён Смale оролцож байна. Good evening.
Good evening.
So tell us what brought you to Mongolia.
Yes. I'm Secretary General of the International Copper Study Group, and in very short terms, Mongolia is an increasingly important copper producer. So the organisation that I head is the International Copper Study Group, an international intergovernmental organisation that works to generate information on the copper market and to generate greater transparency in the market and to ensure smooth operation of the market. The connection with Mongolia is that we invited representatives of Erdnest Mongol to come to our study group meetings that are held twice a year in Europe, and they attended earlier this year, and we were very pleased to have them with us. And as a result of that, they invited me to come to Mongolia. And in a nutshell, my purpose in being here is certainly to learn what I can about the Mongolian copper industry, and at the same time to share with the authorities and the government and the industry here the activities of the Copper Study Group and our knowledge and understanding of what happens in the copper market, and to make them aware of what we do and what we can do to help the Mongolian copper industry. Possibly a result of all this could be that Mongolia might be interested in joining our study group at some point in the future.
What is that study group about? How many members? What are the obligation of the group members? What is the general purpose?
Yes. The Copper Study Group has 23 members, representing some 85% of world's global copper production and trade. So Mongolia is certainly one of the few big and bigger producers that are missing from our membership. The obligations of the members are on the administrative side to pay a very modest annual contribution to meet the budget of the group, and on the work side to contribute statistical information and data on the industry, and to contribute where they can to the joint work that we undertake, so that we can then present an analysis and a global picture back to our members on all aspects of the copper industry.
So the member country will receive the latest update on the industry, market demand, trend, future, etc., which will make easier to plan.
That's exactly right, and that data is produced and released every month.
Every month.
Yeah.
I just wonder why Mongolia was not a member before, and how long is it that your organization existing?
Our organisation has been in existence since 1992. Mongolia has been a small producer, and it's very difficult for any country to participate in international forum, as many international forums as they might wish to. But now that the output is growing, it's becoming much more sensible for Mongolia to take a close interest in the work of the study group.
What is the total size of production of copper a year, annual, and what is the size of Mongolia inside of it?
Yes. Well, the mine production is about 17 million tonne now. Copper coming from the copper contained coming out of the ground, increasing probably up to about 21 million tonnes by 2018. And Mongolia's production I think maybe it could be heading towards 200,000 contained tonnes of copper now, and increasing up to an average of over 400,000 tonnes a year when the Oyu Tolgoi mine is operating at full capacity.
So combined together, this could be not that small part of the whole world, a production of copper.
Certainly, and Oyu Tolgoi will be one of the biggest individual mines in the world when it is fully developed.
Compared to Chile, how you compare that?
Yeah.
How much Chile does produce?
Well, Chile is producing about 1/3 of world mine supply. So I think maybe it's not for countries to aspire to be copper producers of the size of Chile, because it's a very much a one-off case, and in fact Chile dominates copper like no other country dominates no other major mineral.
So production size and the efficiency, cost-wise, efficiency of copper production in Chile impact on the way how market behaves.
Certainly, the global copper market is a free, open, and transparent market. Certainly helped by the work that the study group does in that regard, and so. You can talk about there being one copper price in the world. Of course, that's very naive to say that, because there are all sorts of local factors that increase or decrease price, add premiums, and so on. But because global copper is so widely traded, there does tend to be a point of reference, and certainly there is the London Metal Exchange price, which forms that point of reference. So if a country like Chile is a very efficient producer of copper, then that keeps the global price down, because the price does reflect the costs of production.
So London sets the price.
Well, that sounds like an interventionist approach. It's not so much that London sets the price, but the London Metal Exchange, where copper futures are bought and sold, has a reference period each day, and that trading.
Well, that's something we want to understand more.
Yes.
In Mongolia.
Yes.
When we talk about London Metal Exchange, when they exchange goes on, this trade, when it's happening in London, electronically, probably also physically, right?
Yes,
like London
that's right.
Stock, the New York Stock Exchange, physically they change. So how many spots around the world, transport spots, delivery points, they are referring to? Well, in all of them, Texas, New York.
Yes.
What is the in the case of copper?
It can refer to any number of points. It's the traders who are members of the stock who are members of the London Metal Exchange are doing the trading, but they are trading on behalf of companies, both buyers and sellers, all around the world. So points of delivery can be all around the world.
Any port.
It can effectively be any.
Depending on where the producer is. I mean, the demand.
Yes, where the supply is and where the demand is. And as I indicated, the actual price that will be realised is also subject to many local factors that are also taken into account on top.
And another part, substantial component of the price change is the reserve. Where are the most large reserves in the case of copper?
Yes. Well, the reserves are held by producers. They're held by consumers, and in some cases they are held by. Well, certainly in the case of China, they're held by the government in terms of the reserves, strategic reserves board. And they can also be held in warehouses for financing purposes. And that can be by people that are involved in the copper industry or by people who are not involved in the copper industry. So it's not a linear relationship, but the higher stocks are is usually a pointer towards lower prices.
Is it like in case of OPEC? They talk about the size of or certain ceiling of production a year to control the price.
Yes.
Is it the case with copper or not?
In terms of the type of
The prices of copper.
Yeah. Well,
Kind of
certainly, it definitely. But the price of copper is it refers to 99.99% refined copper.
Okay.
Okay.
Like gold.
Yeah,
like gold.
That's
purity,
right. Like
yes.
gold. So the quality of the ore,
Yes.
of course, has a tremendous impact on the
How
on
much
the
you have
cost
it,
of
yes.
the ore
Yes.
and the cost to process it through to copper. But the copper that's traded is 99.99%
Yes.
copper. So if you've got a ton of ore in one country,
Yes.
it might only realise half what a ton of ore will realise in another country,
Okay.
because the content of copper might be
See,
different, and the content of undesirable impurities might be different. So, in other words, the cost of producing copper from that ton of ore in the ground might be infinitely different from one country to another.
In terms of shape or form of the pure, for example, in case of gold, it's bullion.
Yes.
How about copper?
Yes.
What shape of this?
Well, most copper is traded as cathode. Cathode and
How thin, thick? There is a
Well,
standard or?
Yeah, there is a standard. But I mean, it doesn't have to be a precise standard because it's weighed, and so its quality is 99.9% in general, and so it's a cathode that's basically a sheet that's been deposited due to electrolysis process, and with the hangers on it where it's hung.
See.
Maybe I don't know how thick. Maybe half a centimetre, perhaps.
Okay,
maybe,
5 millimeter about.
Yes, but I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't swear
This
to
is
that.
what is staying or some sticking into the cathode.
That's right. That's right. So it's what's deposited.
Yes.
It's what's deposited. So that's the pure copper that's then sold to semi-fabricated.
Yes. Okay. Now, obviously, a country like Mongolia, dependent on almost two minerals. Like one is coal, the other is copper. Our life and economic activity is dependent on the price of copper. And we understand it's cyclical, like any commodity. What makes different the copper cyclical character compared to other commodity?
Well, maybe if we start off with what makes it similar to other commodities, and that is the fundamentals. It's the supply-demand balance, and at any in any period. There will be a certain match or mismatch between supply and demand for copper, and that is a key determinant of price. Beyond that, and I can go into that a little bit further, but beyond that, in recent years there's been an increasing amount of participation in the market by financial players who are not looking to buy copper for the purpose of manufacturing or transformation.
And, they look at the reserve of currency, money.
Well, that's right. For hedge funds, pension funds, and certainly in the case of China, and this is not the Chinese government, but individuals or companies in China have also been using it as collateral for getting loans to a certain extent, for getting loans for other purposes. So there's been a range of financial participants in the market which can push the price up if there's increasing demand, and can push the price down if they're letting their holdings go.
At this time of moment now, what is the level of price today?
The price today is, I haven't looked actually for a couple of days, but it's about $5,100 a tonne.
ton. But it was recently 8,000, isn't it?
Yes, it has been up to 8,000, but you know, in the last perhaps in the last 10 years, it's been down to 2,000.
2,000. So this is a great fluctuation of prices.
Well, over that period of time, it's a significant fluctuation.
So 10 years, you said?
Maybe a bit more than 10 years ago.
Okay, about 10 years, let's say.
Maybe,
now we are
12,
about in the
15.
middle of it. If you compare this 2,000 and 8,000, about.
Well, yes, you could say that. I mean, it has been higher than 8,000, also in recent times. But other things changed as well. The value of the US dollar has been at different levels during that period,
Yes.
which has a direct impact on
Yes.
on the price of.
What is the link with US dollar?
Well, it was maybe not a
strength?
direct link, but it's a depending on whether where the company is sourcing its supplies from. The impact of the US dollar can affect it one way or the other.
Yes.
And it also can affect interest rates and therefore the cost of borrowing. But I think the cost of production are an important factor in terms of the price
and the
level.
profit, yes.
And cost of production have been going up in recent years, have perhaps come down a little bit more recently as borrowing costs have been reduced with low interest rates, and some of the costs of supplies equipment have moderated. So there's a range of factors, but certainly supply demand is the key.
What is the most common or largest form of consumption of copper?
Well, it's as a first use, it's wire rod.
Wire rod, okay.
And that's as first use, and then that is transformed then into, for example, into cable, or into thinner wire.
Okay.
And then if you look at the next level of usage, you're talking about use in electrical equipment.
Yes.
In electrical infrastructure.
Yes.
And in construction. And also there's other uses which are important, such as automotive, for example, where we see a lot of copper.
Цаг хугацаа давтагдчихгүй. Харин түүнийг яаж зөв ашигласнаар бидний амжилт бүтээл, аз жаргал биднийг дагдаг. Урлагийн хүний хувьд гэр бүл, уран бүтээлдээ зарцуулах цагаа зөв зохицуулах хэрэгтэй байдаг. Бидний хэрэглээ улам ухаалаг болсоор байгаа нь та бүхэнд харагдаж байна. Харин энэ бүхэн надад үнэхээр их таалагдчих.
Ухаалаг орон сууц. King Tower Apartment. Хаягд 6,000 төгрөгөд гэр бүл Азийн хөнгөлөлтийн бүртгэлтэй дотны 5 хүнтэйгээ өдрийн сарын турш хязгааргүй яриарай. Mobicom.
Okay, what kind of parts in automotive are consisting of copper?
Yes, well, it's the electrical equipment, so it's the alternator, generator,
and all the wires inside of the car as well,
and all the harnesses connecting the wires together within the car.
Now they say the cars may move to different technology of engine.
Yes.
Say whatever, hydrogen or different,
yes.
Gas or electric.
Yes.
Whatever is that form is existing, but still the car will use copper.
Yes. Certainly, by some, on the basis of some research, there is suggestions that the amount of copper per car will increase, and could increase significantly with greater uptake of hybrid and particularly electric vehicles.
Why? Hybrid will
well,
take
because
you-
there will be more copper required in a pure electric vehicle than there is in
I see.
internal combustion.
So even
engine.
with the car type of engines change it, still we are looking forward increasing of car consumption. Why I'm asking, because we are dependent on China.
Yes.
Because we're closest to China, mostly whatever buy our copper
Yes.
they sell to China.
Yes.
How do you see that Chinese consumption down the road?
Yes, yeah. The Chinese consumption is at a lower rate of growth. It's still growing strongly every year. The rate of growth is much lower than it was a decade ago, where we were seeing growth rates above 10% for copper. Now it's probably nearer 3%, 4%, 5% a year. But this is on a much larger basis than we had before. So the actual absolute increase in demand for copper in China each year is still very strong. And
More than economic growth?
it had been more than economic
Okay.
growth. As we go forward, it might be less
Less.
than economic growth, just in terms of the intensity of usage of
But
copper.
the size, what percentage of copper consumption belongs to China?
At the present time, it's around about 45%
Wow.
of global copper demand is in China.
Who is the next largest?
The next largest, I think, is United States.
US.
Yeah, United States after that.
Okay.
So with Chinese demand, there is still a lot further to go in terms of infrastructure. Maybe that's the area where it's slowing. But in terms of the high-speed rail, in terms of the power grid,
Yes.
there's still a long way to go in terms of demand. And as China looks more towards consumer
Yes.
led
Yes.
demand, there's a lot of copper usage in things like air conditioning and other home
It's
appliances,
urbanization, it will require more.
and the houses
Yeah,
themselves.
in general trend, there will be still increase in demand about 5 to 7% in China.
Maybe less than 7%, but still
Okay,
increasing
still.
demand.
So that
Yes.
Mongolian copper still will find our market.
Still find a home. Certainly.
You have been working in Australian government some time ago, right?
Yes.
And you have been a policy developer in the Australian government focusing on industry policy development. And you see now you are more or less getting familiar with what we do. What would be your initial thoughts about Mongolia in terms of improving our policy towards particular copper mine?
Yes, yeah. Well, I think it's probably a bit presumptuous of me to give advice, but certainly some observations would be that a robust mining policy is important that applies rights to exploration and to development, and a very clear and consistent royalties or taxation policy is important. Any country always wants to maximise its revenue from its resource stream, but every country at the same time also wants to maximise its inward foreign investment.
Yes.
And the two objectives can be conflicting, or at least not necessarily move in the same direction. So a balance for any country has to be struck between.
In that sense, many people talk here to create more value-added
Yes.
element in our final export.
Yes.
And some suggest that we, instead, first of all, let's concentrate, let's make a concentrate. Secondly, let's create a pure cathode copper.
Yes.
And then some even they say, no, let's make a wire code,
Yes.
wire
Yes.
roads. So should we do that? What is the ups and downs on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the answer to that is I haven't got the faintest idea whether you should do it, but it should be examined because all of these things are an economic prospect, and so to add value to the ore by it's certainly concentrated now, and that's adding value before
Way
export.
better, yes.
To take it to the next further step to a smelting, and then beyond that to refining, it can be very good economic sense for a country, or it's really for a producer, because it's on a mine basis.
On the mine site.
But then beyond that to do semi-fabricated products. But in some instances it's not good economics. You have to work out how much it would cost you to do it. You have to look at your markets. If you find that your key markets have an overcapacity of smelting, then possibly they will have much more demand for concentrate than they will have for cathode.
Final product.
Yeah, that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but you have to take those sort of factors into account to work out whether it's a good idea. And then to go from the refined product through to semi-fabricated products, you have to work out where your market is, whether your market is here, or if it's an export market, and if it is an export market, is it
export market.
Is it an economic export market?
So you better to weigh how much we can go on the supply chain path, how deep we can depends on what is your customer demand, opportunity, possibility.
Well, I think what I would say is that it has to be examined. It has to be looked at very, very closely and determine whether it's an economic prospect or not.
As a country like Mongolia, at the level of making concentrate, just to make about smelter, what will be the major environmental concern that the people should know?
Well, smelter technology is improving around the globe, and mining companies know that they won't have a license to operate if they don't produce without polluting the environment or without adversely affecting the local community. And so I think that if there is a good economic case for Mongolia to proceed to smelting and then to go beyond that, there is a lot of best practice available in terms of production technology that can minimise the extent of impact on the environment. The sort of impacts on the environment that you might have are emissions, water usage, and power usage if there's a significant drain on the infrastructure. But all of these things can be can be mitigated, and problems can be overcome.
When you go to the next step in the value chain, making a smelter, I understand we will use a lot the sulfur. Yes.
Well, but emissions can be trapped. Yes. I mean, you use a lot of sulfur. Well, there's various inputs and outputs from the process. Sulfuric acid, for example, but these are traded products, and they, in terms of emissions, noxious gases can be trapped and then processed or traded. So there's no inherent reason why the transformation process should cause environmental problems.
Yeah, that's something that we have not been dealing with before.
Yes.
It's something new it's kind of a chemical industry.
Yes.
Where there will be in the process of making a pure copper, or this smelter process.
Yeah.
We'll have a lot of H2SO4, right? We will have a lot of sulfur.
Yes.
And where we can use that.
Well, it's an export. It's a tradable product. It's used for fertilizer.
As fertilizer.
We don't know for fertilizer.
For
fertilizer.
So still the byproducts can be used in that sense.
Yes, certainly.
How do you see, because we have two copper mines now, the people talk about combine them together in terms of output and create one common smelter.
Yes.
Should it be at one of them sites or it could be in a separate? What is your advice? What do people talk about?
It depends on, once again, a full analysis of the various factors, because if the mines are a long way from the transportation routes, it might make sense to have your smelter somewhere away from both of the mines.
I see.
But where the concentrate can be transported reasonably economically, and then the smelter might be located more conveniently for transportation links, for power supply, or for environmental purposes. So the answer might be near one mine or the other, or it might be a separate location altogether based on these factors.
My last question on the consumption of water. Obviously, this is very water resource lacking country in terms, particularly to use for industrial purposes, and compared with making concentrate to making smelter, how much water we will use more?
I'm not sure what the figures are there in terms of how much it would use, but I can tell you that that this is not a new problem that Mongolia would be facing. Probably the best example of all is Chile, which has a massive copper industry, both in terms of mining and in terms of smelting, to a lesser extent smelting, but certainly a strong smelting industry. And their water availability is a real issue, and it's being met by a number of ways. Certainly by seeking more sources of water underground, but also by desalination processes, and also by best practice in terms of recycling. And so many of these operations will
How can we monitor as public that process better?
Well, there is a lot of information out there in terms of how water management is taking place, and I think you just need to look at what's happening in other jurisdictions to see whether the performance is adequate or not.
That means being a member of your group, Mongolian government will receive information of the best practices.
Well, we could certainly undertake a study, for example, on best practice in water management, which would be of interest to Mongolia, and would be of interest to countries like Chile and Australia.
And hopefully this information available to the government will be available also to broader public in the country.
Well, the Copper Study Group works for its members, so we would produce something for governments, and then it's up to governments to share.
Well, hopefully our government will share. You know, Mr. Smale, what you told us today is extremely important and interesting, because then people will have more understanding on what's going on behind this whole copper things.
Yes.
And we are very thankful for you to share this interesting information, and good luck, and I want Mongolia to be a member with you guys and learning more.
Thank you very much. We're certainly working with the government, working with companies like Erdnest Mongol, who have got the responsibility for the development of the mining resources. We see a very bright future for your country and your industry.
Good luck.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.
So хүн төзөгчтэй өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Олон улсын Зэсийн Группийн засгийн газрын хоорондын байгууллага юм байна. Манайх гишүүнээр их сонирхолтой. Энэ байгууллагын Ерөнхий нарийн бичгийн дарга ноён Дан Смэйл оролцлоо. Их баярлалаа.
Аюулгүй 6,000 төгрөглөөд гэр бүл Азийн хөнгөлөлтөнд бүртгэлтэй дотны 5 хүнтэйгээ өдрийн сарын турш хязгааргүй яриарай. Mobicom